Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. I'm Catherine Tindall. I'm a partner here at Dominion. We're a specialty tax and accounting firm that works for financial advisors as their strategic tax planners. But on today's episode, I have with me Chad Hufford. Chad is the founder of Veritas Wealth Management in Anchorage. He's got 6 kids, and he is a Dave Ramsey SmartVestor Pro expert. He's been working with them for a while, and he's also the author of a best-selling book, Forging Financial Freedom, and runs his practice up in Alaska. So thanks for joining me today, Chad.
Catherine, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we were having a bit of I liked where we started our conversation a little bit earlier, just talking about how you see yourself as running your practice pretty differently from how other advisors run their practices. What are some of the things that you think are unique that you want to get that message out to other advisors to maybe think about?
I think a lot of advisors who are successful spend a lot of time very efficiently doing things that don't need to be done at all or shouldn't be done by them.
Okay.
And they create a ceiling for themselves.
Yes.
And so either two things happen. Number one is they have a relatively comfortable but low ceiling. That's the thing about this business is you can run a very inefficient practice and still make pretty decent money.
Yes.
But you end up creating a ceiling for yourself that's unnecessary. The other thing I see is people who own a financial practice, but when you really get into the weeds, you realize, no, you have a financial practice that owns you.
Yes.
And I think people can migrate to either one of those. And going back to what I just said, I mean, I think there's a lot of unsuccessful advisors doing plenty wrong, but the ones who are successful but can't quite break through that barrier, it's because they're putting major emphasis on minor things. I mean, just give you one example. I cannot remember the last time I read a mutual fund report or an economic update.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. We are building our clients' financial futures for the climate, not for today's weather report. And so many people are focused on the weather report. And you can justify it like, hey, I'm trying to better understand this. I mean, I want to know what clients are asking about and things like that. Well, if you want to spend your day reacting to what clients are asking, that's great. But if you want to coach them so you don't have to have those conversations, it's completely different. But it's putting in the work up front rather than reacting to everything going on around us. And it's the same thing we're asking our clients to. We're asking our clients to act on a plan, not react to current events. But yet advisors do the exact opposite.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's one of those like what you're talking about. I've seen this in practice so many times. Because I get under the hood with a lot of practices and seeing, okay, this is their team size, this is what they're doing. And then I look at the P&Ls and I'm like, oh, well, this is, I see different, profit margins of what people are doing. And then also a lot of the conversations around like, how are you framing the services? Like, how are you doing things? And what you're saying is totally true. It's really easy for people to kind of get to that pain line really quickly if you don't have the systems built out. What are some of the, so when you go to look at kind of how you've structured your own practice, if you had an advisor who is coming in who's kind of hit that pain line of can't do the delegation or whatever the issues that you've encountered when you talk to other advisors, you're like, really, like it sounds like your house is on fire over there. How would you go about making some of those corrections or the pieces that when you were designing your own practice that you considered core and focusing on those pieces first? What are those exact spots that people should be looking at?
How much time do you spend on the phone talking to prospects, offering your services to people that you don't currently work with, maybe you never even met before? How many hours a week do you spend doing that? And a lot of advisors would say that's important, but they don't do it. And it gets shoved into the margins. And I just like a budget, people who don't have a budget end up at the end of their day, end of their month, wondering where all their money went. And the same thing goes with an advisor's time. If we don't budget that, if we don't strategically schedule time to prospect, there's a lot of other much more enjoyable less painful things to do than prospecting, it ends up being pushed to the margins, and sometimes very little is done at all. So we complain about we don't have the right type of clients, but what are you doing to change that? And we spend so much time on the phone, replying to emails with, we call them our PITA clients, our pain in the butt clients, but you can't replace them because you're not prospecting. And it's
Yeah.
kind of a catch-22. So I think if people spent more time on, and I'm talking about on the phone, if you can't be rejected, it doesn't count as prospecting. It's not sending emails, it's not sending postcards, it's not doing mass mailers, it's not doing social media stuff. A lot of that is time wasting. It is on the phone or in person, showing up at somebody's office and saying, Catherine, hey, I know we haven't really met. So-and-so suggested that we talked, but I think I could really help you get to where you want to be financially. And how would you like to entrust your family's financial future to me? Obviously, that's not the whole pitch, but that's essentially the conversation. If you can't tell me no, then it doesn't count. So advisors have to get comfortable putting themselves out there. And it does a couple of things. Number one, it reminds them that their pipeline is full, because every single day they're executing this discipline. So they don't have to worry about hanging on to the clients that probably shouldn't be clients in the first place. They can release some of those people. The other thing is, for new people coming in, we're interviewing them, not the other way around. What we offer, Catherine, is priceless. We have the opportunity to change somebody's life, not just their financial trajectory, but their family trajectory. And if they're a $2 million client, I'm going to make some decent revenue off that. Is it going to change my life? Absolutely not. So they have to prove to me that they have what it takes. But if I'm not prospecting much and somebody with a couple $1 million rollover comes in, I'm so worried about getting that client. I might onboard somebody who is a terrible team player. They might be a dumpster fire of a financial situation, and they're going to eat up so much of my time and, more importantly, so much of my energy. So I think having a healthy prospecting routine is one of the most important things, even for a seasoned advisor, because if you've built up that muscle, you've got 100, 200, $300 million of AUM, you know how to prospect, you've done it. Don't let that muscle atrophy. And for somebody who's under 100,000 AUM, that is probably your number one most important task.
Yeah, no, it's the especially in those early days, like the revenue solves all problems kind of a thing. And I think your point of making sure that you've got that hopper of leads like really full and you're actively prospecting and working on those clients, so that, like you said, you're not coming into those sales conversations with a scarcity mindset either, because clients feel that, when you're talking to them, and if it's I'm desperate to get this sale done versus, are you actually a good fit for my practice? Are you a psycho? Like, are you like, is this actually going to be a good relationship? Can I get you a transformation? Are you the kind of person that I can get that transformation for?
Exactly.
And you need a lead hopper full of that in order to really have have the conversation go the way that it should.
Well, and a lot of us, Catherine, we're trained to sell, trained to be convincing. I tell my team, be really careful about being too convincing, because if you sell an idea, you will have to sell that person over and over and over and over again. If you get them to buy in, it's their perspective changing, not their emotions changing. A salesman can change emotions. A really good financial planner can change perspective. And if you can get somebody to think differently, then you can actually transform how they approach a situation. But if you sell somebody, there's not a lot of buy-in. You're going to have to sell them every time the market goes down, every time some index is outperforming your diversified portfolio, every time somebody comes along with a flashier, sexier financial planning tool. But if you get them to buy in, you can actually coach them and direct them and guide them rather than selling them over and over again. And a lot of times advisors get really good at being convincing, and then a month later they have to sell the person who's already their client, and 6 months after that they have to sell them again. And again, you start creating the ceiling for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so true. So if you're, maybe to the extent that you'd like to share this, I know advisors are always interested. Like, I had an advisor ask me the other day, they were like, well, how do you do your prospecting process? And I'm like, well, I have a completely different audience than you, so it's going to be completely different, right? And then what I do is very different than what you do, so it's not going to be good advice. But I know advisors are always interested in hearing what other people are doing for like their prospecting, lead generation process, especially for the kind of practice that you're building and the way that you're building it, I bet people would be interested to hear a little bit more of like, what are some of the practical, pieces of how you've structured things for the lead generation. Just a slight interruption in this conversation. I wanted to bring to your attention two things that are important for you to know. So, we're always at the mercy of social media algorithms. So, if you can subscribe to the show, that would mean a lot to me. Even more to me if you can leave a rating and let me know what you think about it. But we have a new newsletter that's coming out. It's going to be very active in 2025. That is specifically around tax issues that I'm seeing advisors face in their own practices, changes in legislations, and the pieces that I think are critically important for you to stay ahead of as an advisor with the new administration. So nearby, wherever you're interacting with this, will be the link of how to sign up for our newsletter. Also nearby will be the link to my LinkedIn, which is the best way to get in touch with me, learn more about what we're doing for advisors in the tax strategy and compliance work that we do, and also to get access to the various tools and interviews and things that I do, specifically designed to help you improve your practice, improve your own tax situation, etc. So let's get back to the episode, and thanks for tuning in.
I think the most important thing is not how you do it, but that you do it. And people can definitely get caught up in the weeds. I'll just give you an example. So think of it again. I already referred to this as like building up a muscle, and I will come back to some specifics. I want to answer your question, but I want to set the groundwork first. So prospecting is like building a muscle. If you have not been consistently prospecting, don't try to do 100 calls this week. You're going to burn yourself out. And it'd be like somebody, we're recording this in December, or it's almost December, but pretty soon here, Catherine, people are going to be joining gyms, and they're going to go guns blazing in early January. And by February, those people are back on the couch, binge watching Netflix with a bucket of ice cream.
Yeah.
Because they're not going for sustainability. They're trying to make up for lost time. And they're going to work out super hard for that first week and be miserable and be like, this stinks. I'm not doing this anymore. I'll wait till next January.
Yeah.
If you have not been consistently prospecting, start out with maybe 5 calls a day and give yourself a little treat afterwards. Maybe, you get to check your social media, or you get to play a game on your iPhone. And I don't even know what iPhone games are right now. Crazy Birds, whatever the thing is. I don't care.
That's old school.
eat some ice cream. I don't freaking care. But attach some sort of reward, because I've got a bunch of kids. We just potty trained our youngest a couple of years ago, and we gave him treats every time he did what he was supposed to. At some point, adults think, "Oh, I'm beyond that. I don't need treats." Yes, you do. You're still a human being. Yeah. And if you're going to delay gratification, you also need to reward the input. The input is not the client you get. It's not how many appointments you scheduled.
Yes.
It's how many times you put yourself in front of somebody and said, I can help you. Will you give me that chance? So going back to this fitness analogy, we don't want to burn ourselves out. We got to start slow. It's not about how many calls you can make this week. It's about how many calls you can make this year and this decade. Start slow and build consistently. And don't worry so much about how. Like, I've had people, I'm pretty into fitness, and it's a big part of how to clear my mind and how I stay sharp for my clients. I believe my clients deserve the best of me, and that's how I do it. So I'll be in the gym and I'll have somebody ask me like, well, I see you doing this type of exercise, and what do you think is, the best type of leg workout? Should I do deadlifts, or should I do squats? Should I do lunges? I heard lunges are really good, but do you turn your toes in? Do you turn your toes out? I'm thinking, I've never seen you do anything but stare at the TV in here. Like, do something. I don't care. Pick a machine and just move some weight.
Yeah.
So with prospecting, whatever you can commit to is the best thing. So what we do is a lot of one-to-many conversations. So we have a lot of follow-up on that, whether it's a podcast, news interviews. I'll be speaking to the police department a couple times next week. But that takes time to build. So any audience that will take, if you don't have regular speaking engagements, any audience that will take you, go to a local Rotary Club, talk to a church, speak for free, get used to that, because a one-to-many conversation is a great way to put yourself in front of a lot of people. So when you do those follow-up calls, you're talking to somebody who you've already kind of been vulnerable with a little bit. Now, if you don't have that, you can buy leads lists. Those are tough. But if you've been doing a good job with your current clients, let them know, saying, hey, I still have a few spots left. I take on a few clients every year. You know that I'm picky. I only want to work with really good folks, but not everybody is getting great financial advice right now. In fact, a lot of people are getting their advice from YouTube and TikTok. I'd like to change that. Do you have anybody in your circle that might benefit from an introduction? See where that goes. Our best clients are referrals. And again, if you're just starting your practice, it takes time to build referrals too.
Yeah.
But if you have to tear a page out of the phone book and start calling people, maybe send them a postcard to warn them. But again, if you're 5 years into this, you probably don't have a huge network of people to get in front of that is natural. So you might have to artificially create that. And it's just building that muscle. So it's not even so much about how likely is this person to become a client. It's the fact that you made the call, because you're inundating yourself, you're inoculating yourself against rejection.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing. So I for another podcast I was on a little bit ago, Catherine, somebody asked, like, how many rejections do you think you've faced? And I wasn't sure, so I went and figured it out. Somewhere between 75 and 80,000.
Nice.
75 between 80,000, and I still get rejected every single day.
Yep.
And a lot of times right now I'm prospecting for my team. So a lot of folks I talk to, I'm trying to connect them, but I work so hard to build up that endurance, that perseverance.
Yeah.
That I don't want to let it go. So hopefully that gives your listeners some ideas.
No, that's awesome. I love that feat. That's like, I think the perfect answer, because it really is about that consistency. And I love that you highlight how much the rejection is, because I think when advisors, when you go into the situation and you think, oh, if I'm not getting 100%, if I'm not getting, a home run every time at bat, I'm failing. When in reality, it's like, no, if I'm getting a 80% rejection rate, that's fine. Like, that's okay. I'm okay with that. And, just hitting the volume that you need to hit. Like, if you can get yourself, like you said, inoculated to the rejection, that's just what's involved, right? Like, you're going to find people where they're not in the right part of this buying journey, whatever it is, like whatever's not the fit. But if you're not taking the at-bats, you're not going to get that 20% or whatever it is.
Well, and here's something so I love that. I was thinking the exact same analogy. I mean, Barry Bonds had like 2,000 strikeouts in his career or something like that. He also had 700 and something, almost 800 home runs. And that's what everybody talks about. Well, that and the steroids, but anyway, but you have to face some of those strikeouts. The difference though in this industry is you get an unlimited number of at-bats. So a baseball player might get 500-600 at-bats in a year. And if you strike out, and that's the other thing about baseball, is most of the time you aren't getting a home run. Most of the time you're not even getting on base. You're failing more than you're succeeding. Yeah. But Hall of Famers fail 2 out of 3 times and still are the best to ever play the game. Yeah. But in this industry, you can get as many at-bats as you want. If you want 3 or 4 and call it a day, that's fine. But you can take 20, 30, 40 at-bats if you want to. And everybody's worried about close ratio. And here's one thing I'll try to be quick on this, Catherine, but we actually try to lower our close ratio. Because if you're closing 30% of the people that you're talking to, you're not being picky enough. Yeah. You're probably accepting people you shouldn't. Yeah. And the other thing is, if you're somebody who's talking to 10, 15, 20 people a week, and you gradually build up to maybe 100, 20 a day, your close ratio will improve because you're talking to so many people. You'll get better on your feet. You'll be better at answering questions. And like you said, Catherine, people can feel it. Like, this guy is calm. He's comfortable. He's not desperate. This lady is not trying to sell me. She's trying to teach me and educate me and get me excited. Because you're not trying to close anymore. You're just going through your routine. You're building your muscle. You're hitting your reps, and people can feel that. You will get better at telling your story and being more compelling by simply doing it over and over again. So most people are so concerned about how do you improve your, like, what's your script? What's your pitch? And I'm just gonna make up a number. Let's say you're getting appointments with 10% of the people you reach out to. It's a lot easier to double the amount of people you reach out to than to double that 10% to a 20. In fact, you should probably never double it to a 10 to a 20, because then you're going to be bringing in people that should probably stay on the streets where they belong. I'm
Yeah,
sorry, but not everybody is willing to be helped, and 20% of people probably
exactly.
aren't. Anyway, but if you're talking to 50 people and, let's say 5 or 10 of them, let's say 5, get appointments with you, rather than trying to increase that to 6 or 7 by coming up with a better crafted elevator pitch, just double the amount of people you talk to from 50 to 100, and you'll probably get your 8, 9, 10, 11 appointments. So doubling that, or focusing on the input, that's the variable that people need to dwell on,
Hmm.
not the elevator speech.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I think that that's such a good answer. Like it's a volume game. It's just volume, just getting yourself to the consistent volume, and then you will figure it out as you go. Um, that's so great. So for advisors who are interested in getting to know you a little bit better, what are good ways for them to connect with you, Chad?
They can find me on LinkedIn, also on Instagram and Facebook, but we put probably the most of our content ends up going out on Instagram. Veritas.Alaska is our handle on there, and you can look me up on LinkedIn. Chad Hufford, not too many of us. I'm the only one in Alaska.
There you go. Love it. So for advisors listening, go connect with Chad and spy on what he's doing and copy it yourself or talk to him. So I want to thank you, Chad, for coming on the show. And any closing thoughts you have before we sign off?
I just want to give your listeners one little nugget takeaway. If you don't listen to anything I talked about, I read a book probably 10 years ago that changed my life, not just my career. And this book has literally been worth millions of dollars of revenue. And it's called The Game of Numbers. You already said it. This is a numbers game, Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
Game of Numbers by Nick Murray. It transformed my practice. It transformed how I looked at prospecting, and it transformed how I looked at even failure in other parts of my life. So Game of Numbers, it'll change your practice if you let it. And it might even change your life.
Awesome. Well, I'll have to go check that one out. I haven't seen it. And being an accountant, I do love numbers. So, but thanks again for joining me, Chad. And for people listening, we'll post a link nearby to that book too, for you to check it out. But thanks for joining me. And this was another episode of the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast.